Hello, welcome to the Ensemble Experience, a podcast series by the Choral Arts Society of Washington, where choir members turn the spotlights on each other. Each episode brings two voices together to share personal stories, memorable moments, and the history they created within our choir. Discover the bonds and experiences that make our choral community unique. Today I'm joined by Brian Wells and Ann Kaiser. Brian Wells has joined Choral Arts in 2021, making this his fourth season. He works on international exchanges, helping to build connections between people in the U.S. and rising leaders from all over the world. Ann Kaiser joined in 1975, marking this as her 50th season. Professionally, she was a still photographer and photo editor with National Geographic before going freelance and focusing on documenting the life of famed Everest mountaineer Sir Edmund Hillary and his decades-long humanitarian work with the Sherpa people of Nepal, a career that has transformed her life ever since. And then this is their ensemble experience.
Hi, Anne. I am so excited to be sitting down with you to talk about choral arts and your experience. I know you've been in the choir for a really long time, and I've just been here for this. I think this is my fourth season. So I'm curious to hear from you about your experience with choral arts and all of that. But maybe we should just start with how long have you actually sung with this group?
This year actually marks my 50th consecutive year being a member of the chorus. So it's kind of a
Wow,
big year, I would say. And in short, and putting it mildly, it's really been one extraordinary journey.
that's fantastic. 50 straight years.
50 straight
That
years.
I aspire to that. That's amazing. So, what drew you to the choir 50 years ago? I mean, how did you first become involved?
So I had returned to Washington after college to take a great job at National Geographic. But Brian, something was missing. And it was the first time since I could remember that choral arts and, well, choral music was not a part of my life. And that goes way back to elementary school. And at the same time, a dear friend of mine from Middlebury College, with whom I sang in the choir, Andy Wenzel, he had moved back to DC to take a job, and he joined Choral Arts. And he actually had an amazing voice and went on to be a tenured university voice professor. But he said, "Hey, Blossom," and that's my middle name. And so that's what he always called me.
Oh,
He
that's
said,
cute.
he said, "You've got to audition." And I sort of went, I'm not so sure. And actually, Brian, it took a year or so to gather my courage. I canceled several audition appointments along the way. But when I heard that the Brahms Requiem was a part of the 75 season, that is what got me off over the audition hump. And the rest is pretty much history. And the Brahms, along with a few others, is really truly one of my favorite works.
I love that piece. It's just such a gorgeous, it's so clearly written specifically for great choirs. I'm very jealous. I have not sung all of that with choral arts yet, but I'm hopeful something like that shows up in the future. Um, so you've had this incredible tenure. Um, what kind of what how did you first kind of dig into this time with choral arts? How has this really impacted your personal growth and your development over the years?
Well, I think I'd go back to saying that it was really Norman Scribner, who's our founding director, uh,
Hmm.
had profound influence on me. And frankly, he did for everyone who else who sang and who was part of the organization. But we always referred to choral arts as Norman's baby. But in all fairness, Brian, you got to see it this way, that anytime you're a founder of anything, it's a unique and special situation. So, at that time, the chorus was totally dedicated to excellence in all aspects of the organization and all of its operations. And as well, I actually joined Norman's church choir at St. Albans. He had formed the senior choir. So I sang in that for 25 years, and that's why we rehearse where we do today. So there's a huge history of his presence even today, many years later. So,
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a relatively new singer, and I hear his name all of the time. So
Yeah,
clearly such a profound influence there.
exactly. So I just felt this was an amazing opportunity and honor to have the chance to sing alongside doing my paid job at National Geographic. Um, but I began to make friends who shared the love of choral music, but whose outside lives and backgrounds differed significantly. And as you well know, I met my husband through Choral Arts, and as have a number of other choristers along the way. So, and in addition to that, I mean, my musical career with Choral Arts was wonderful, but then I began to merge my two sort of, you know, occupations or whatever. And I became the sort of official photographer for Choral Arts. We didn't have anybody at that time. This was a pretty young organization. So I said, look, I have a camera. I'm in the chorus. I'm happy to take pictures. So I probably did that for 10, 15 years. And it was great. So you're sort of combining um, your love of music and your love of photography. And it's been great. It's been absolutely a wonderful way to combine my profession with a serious avocation.
That's so cool. And I had no idea that you were involved with the photography of the ensemble as well. Um, that's a great way to pull all sorts of different parts of your lives of your
Right.
life in.
Right.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So kind of still thinking about where you were 50 years ago and kind of the influence of, you said you sang since elementary school. How did that kind of bring you through to choral arts, and how have you grown as a musician through choral arts?
Well, I think I'd have to start by saying my family was very musical going back generations, and everybody played an instrument or did something related to music. And actually, as board chair, my uncle hired Leonard Bernstein for the New York Phil way back in the 1950s.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can imagine one night during break when we were rehearsing with Lenny, I went up to him and I said, "Do you remember my uncle David Kaiser?" And he just looked at me. He just pierced right through me. It was an amazing moment because my uncle had passed away, but there was still this sort of really strong connection. He was very personable. Uh, as we all know, an amazing musician. But
Of course.
anyway, so I, you know, from the get-go, from the time I was 5, I was surrounded by all things music. And then I majored in music in college. So here we are.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I know you've been part of the board before. Could you talk a little bit about that experience? Because I know that's kind of a window into the operations that most of the choir doesn't get to see.
Right. Right. Well, actually, my mother joined the board, back in the 80s.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah. So I began to sort of hear her reactions to board meetings and get a deeper understanding of how artistic organizations work from that different perspective. And then after she died, I joined the board, I think it was in the 1990s. And really, Brian, I've been involved from that angle as well ever since. And I've chaired the board twice. I've been a part of a number of, searches that we've done, both for artistic directors and executive directors. And in addition, just sort of on an aside, but a very important one, I currently serve on the board of Chorus America, which is an advocacy, research, and leadership development organization that advances the choral field. And that's actually
Absolutely.
that's where I met Marie, who's our brand new artistic director. But so I got to know her for several years before she came our way.
It's such a small world to be able to sit with one choir for 50 years and have all of these connections to Leonard Bernstein and to Marie and all of this. That's so cool.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, Anne, one of the things that I have really loved about joining choral arts is this sense of community. Like you said earlier, there are people from all over the world, really, who come to Washington, D.C. and sing in this group. And I immediately felt this kind of sense of belonging. I mean, you found your husband there.
Right.
So, what has this community meant to you?
Well, I look at Washington as sort of an incredibly diverse area. But I've had the advantage of loving and appreciating choral art form and how it can really be an incredibly strong influence on music as a language, something that we communicate with each other, whether it's in our community or a larger community across the globe in one form or another. And we have back here, we have amazing seasons here in DC, and it includes our wonderful tribute to Martin Luther King, the Capitol Fourth on the Mall every summer. But we've also performed nationally and globally over the years. And something I hope, and I know Maria embraces this concept too, that the organization can do more of in the future going forward. Because all
Absolutely.
experience have involved community in one form or another. And
Yeah.
in addition,
Taking
we
our
want to,
community. Oh, sorry.
that's all right.
Um,
That's all right.
yeah.
And I don't know where
Ta-
this would end, but it's kind of a cool
yeah.
opportunity that the organization had, but you're probably too young to remember the television series West Wing.
Oh, I know the West Wing. I've watched every single episode.
Well, there you go. So this was back in 2000, and we were approached to provide a chamber group of singers for the Christmas episode of West Wing. And can you imagine this, Brian, being able to stand outside the White House with the gates wide open, singing? You couldn't do that today.
Jeez. No, no way.
No,
That's so cool. So
absolutely.
that's you all. That's Choral Arts in that
Yeah,
episode.
yeah, absolutely. And if you have the Norman book, we can cut this part out too, but there's a picture in there of that. But yeah, it was, and they emailed, this was early back in the stages when you could email, an audio file to the West Coast. And so we recorded it in advance, and then they emailed it out to the West Coast, and then they combined it all with the visuals and whatnot of the episode. It was an amazing experience.
That's so cool. And Christmas has been such a huge part of my understanding of what choral arts is, with the Christmas concert and family Christmas and the big gala. Um, it's just such a really cool opportunity to share that with, a huge television audience as well.
Right. But I also love the fact you mentioned Christmas, that every year we choose an embassy to partner with for our Christmas concerts and for celebrations that surround that. And for each concert, we perform a few pieces that are reflective of that country and in the language of that country. And this year we're honored, and I really am honored to be collaborating with Estonia, which most people understand is one of the choral capitals of the world. And if you haven't seen the film made in 2006 called The Singing Revolution, I highly recommend it. It demonstrates to me the immense power that choral music can have during troubled times.
Absolutely. I actually studied that a little bit in grad school and wrote a paper on it. And so I have been so excited to be able to work with the Estonian Embassy this year for all of our Christmas stuff.
You did a
Uh,
paper on the Singing Revolution?
I sure did.
Oh
Nonviolent
my,
civil resistance. Yeah.
wow.
And
Wow.
it's just yet another example of the power of choral music, which we could do a whole other podcast series on, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's some of the great stuff that's happening right now. But you've got such a great history with this group. What could you talk about some of your favorite highlights from across the last, 50 years?
So if I were to select a couple of personal highlights from my years with choral arts, hands down, one would have to be our 1993 tour with the National Symphony Orchestra to Russia with then music director and famed cellist Mstislav Rostropovich, who was also a close friend of the current Russian president Boris Yeltsin at the time.
Talk about a
And
small world.
right, right. But political tensions in Russia were high even back then, and the undertaking was almost canceled. But in the end, the tour proceeded. And one event of all of them that really stands in my memory is gathering in Moscow's Red Square, freezing temperatures at 8 a.m. in the morning, the day after our arrival, in front of an emotionally charged audience of 100,000 people, Yeltsin included, who showed up to hear our performance because they were unable to afford a concert ticket, and this is the only way that they could hear
Yeah.
it. And I have to say, the reaction from the audience even surprised me, that people were coming up to us in tears, expressing gratitude for our being there, and they were so thrilled to have had a chance to see us and to witness us. So, I mean, that to me, that's my community of 100,000, right?
Right. Yeah. Wow. What an incredible moment in history to
Right.
be part of.
Right. And then, but in contrast, Brian, I go back to a much more intimate personal highlight, which was and you may have done this too, 2022 performance of Mahler's Resurrection Symphony with the NSO. Did you do
One of my
that?
favorites. Yeah, I was there for that.
With Michael Tilson Thomas, who, of course, he himself was suffering from,
Right.
considerable health issues. But a dear friend of Doug's and mine was nearing her end due to cancer. And
Hmm.
she attended with her family. She emailed me that morning, said, "Are you going?" And I said, "Absolutely." And she said, "I have one request, is that we sing that finale with all our heart." And the following day after that, I mean, I watched her from the stage into the audience, and I could see her family all with their hands held and raised. And the next day she emailed me and she said, "Thank you, thank you. Our family held hands and cried at it beauty. You gave me the most beautiful taste of what lies ahead for me." And Brian, I'll never forget that. I mean, that's your community of one versus a community of 100,000, but they are all equally important.
Wow. I've got chills. That's really powerful because that last movement, that Auferstehen, rise again, is glorious.
It's incomparable,
Yeah.
incomparable. Yeah,
What an incredible moment.
yeah,
Jeez.
yeah.
Ah,
So, from these experiences, then I will get to another one. But as Norman said, we draw from a community and we want to relate back to it. And what really thrills me is that Marie, our new artistic director, has expressed the same desire with the same intensity for her vision for choral arts. And I think she's spot on. I mean, this is what we can do to serve and share opportunities with our community. Uh,
absolutely. And the music that we create is always resonant with, the community around us.
exactly, exactly. And I also wanted to share a haunting memory that interestingly enough, it was already on our 2001, 2002 season,
Mm.
but it was a performance of Philip Glass's Symphony Number 5, the Requiem Bardo, and Nurmanakana, with texts representing all major world religions. And we performed it to a packed audience, which I'm not sure we would have otherwise had 9/11 not happened.
Oh,
And
of course.
I go back and I read the texts of what we were singing, and basically no one could have anticipated this uncanny connection to the horrific event. But people needed a piece just like this as part of their healing. And we sang it with an intensity reflective of the occasion. It came um, to represent a tribute to the victims of the recent attacks, uh, that sort of the attacks of 9/11. So that is something that really sticks out to me, is sort of something that, you know, we um, we sing for joy and we sing to commiserate, we sing to heal, we sing for all sorts of reasons.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. Um, Now, Anne, so we're in this big period of transition. We have Marie with us now, and the rehearsals are already moving forward really quickly, and I think just in a really excellent way. What are your hopes for the future of the choir?
So what I'd love to do is see choral arts embrace new areas of choral music that are evolving as you and I sit here and speak. We've commissioned pieces in the past. What I love about this year, celebrating our 60th, is that Marie has commissioned a Filipino composer, Sandra Choi, who's amazing, to do a work for us for our 60th celebration at the June concert. And to me, this is a reflection of saying, we're here to celebrate that country's culture and history through the filter of choral music, but probably beyond that as well. And that
Yeah,
really appeals to me. And I think I love how strongly she feels about this. And it sort of permeates everything that she thinks about choral arts in its service to our community, to other communities. So I'm really looking forward to Choral Arts actually taking that on as something that is such a rich part of its history with the galas and the embassies and whatnot, and taking it to a deeper level of really trying to understand this complex world, which is about as complex as I've ever seen it, and sort of embrace the concept that the world is our oyster. And that's what comes to mind, given the long history of the embassies. I'm just thrilled that she has really embraced this as something she wants to continue.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it would be so easy to program, only music that we have done before for our 60th anniversary celebration. But to
Right,
acknowledge this choir's, it sounds like I'm increasingly understanding incredible role in the choral field, especially in the United States,
right,
to have the creation of new music be part of that celebration. I think that's brilliant.
exactly,
That's great.
right.
Um, okay, so Anne, I think we have, if I remember right, something like 25 or 30 new members this year, which is really exciting. And I'm relatively new myself, but do you have any advice to somebody who is new to the organization or even thinking about, maybe auditioning next year? What's your advice to them as someone who has, carried this forward for so long?
Well, first of all, I'd say go for the audition and don't do what I did, which was really waste a year overcoming the fear of auditioning. But if you are chosen to participate in this chorus, spend a little bit of time learning the rich history of this unique organization. And the other piece of advice, Brian, I would give is appreciate that while you're involved for your own personal enrichment and your love of singing, that we have a job to do to bring what we love doing to others who come to hear us and who expect high level of, choral quality and performance. And the quality of our product to me is paramount to giving listeners what they deserve and what they've come to hear. So I just see it as what we do is a way to celebrate joy, as well as to serve as a balm in troubled times. And I've experienced both, and both are equally important and meaningful.
I think that's great to remember. Yeah, especially as this new chapter for choral arts opens. We've got an incredible power and a great responsibility for that as well. Well, thank you so much, Anne, for talking with me. It's been really great to get to know your perspective on this, really cool organization. Thanks for giving a little bit of advice, and I can't wait to continue to do these rehearsals and these concerts with you. It's been a real joy. So thanks.
You're more than welcome. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us on the Ensemble Experience by the Choral Arts Society of Washington. We hope these stories bring you closer to the heart of our choral community. Tune in next time for more conversations that celebrate the voices, memories, and harmony that defines our shared journey.